Much of the earliest sources need to be critically assessed, and while we can draw conclusions from them, these are hypothetical, as our conclusions depend on whether those sources are genuine and not later forgeries. Early references are to a Mahmud, which might be vocalized as Mahmud or Muhammad. I tend to lean towards it being Mahmud, considering how the name came down to us in various cultures, mostly in a form similar to Mahmud. The possibilities are that 1. Mahmud was who the Sin says he was, i.e. linked with Mecca and Medina of the Hijaz. 2. He was linked with Mecca, but most of his biography was a later fabrication. 3. He was completely made up, i.e. a fictional character. 4. He was a historical figure, but he is associated with Syria and Iraq and not the Hijaz. 5. He is a composite of historical people. Or 6. MHMD was a historical title given to a series of people who were thought to be the Messiah. At this stage of research, I consider that we can rule out 1 and 2. It is unlikely that he was completely made up, i.e. no. 3. But it is possible that a lot of his story is a fabrication. The options 4, 5, and 6 remain the most likely possibilities given what we know right now. Doubts arise as to whether the Sin can be relied upon, precisely because the earliest evidence asserts that the Tyre of Muhammad was near Gaza in 634 AD. 2 years after he supposedly died. AG 945. Indiction 7, on Friday, the 4th of February, i.e. 634 CE, Dul Qadar 12 AH, at the 9th hour. There was a battle between the Romans and the Tyre of Muhammad, Syr. TDMHMT, in Palestine 12 miles east of Gaza. Thomas the Presbyter. 640 CE, writing in Mesopotamia. One interpretation could be is that this could imply that someone with the title of Mahmet, or likely Mahmud, was alive in 634 AD. This is Mahmud spelt in the Pahlavi way. But Mahmud has been found in southern Arabia on an inscription in 518 AD. So it is more likely Mahmud, and it's simply spelt in the Pahlavi way. MHMT. We should also note that the tribe associated with Mahmud is the Ta'i and not the Quraysh as the later Sin would assert. The Doctrina Jacobi, which is set in Carthage in 634 AD, suggests that there was a Messianic movement occurring at the time, and they were saying that the prophet had appeared, coming with the Saracens, and that he was proclaiming the advent of the Anointed One, the Christ who was to come. Having arrived at Sycamina, in Israel, stopped by a certain old man well versed in scriptures. And I said to him, "What can you tell me about the prophet who has appeared with the Saracens?" He replied, groaning deeply, "He is false. For the prophets do not come armed with a sword. Truly they are works of anarchy being committed today, and I fear that the first Christ to come, whom the Christians worship, was the one sent by God, and we instead are preparing to receive the Antichrist." Indeed, Isaiah said that the Jews would retain a perverted and hardened heart until all the earth should be devastated. But you go, Master Abraham, and find out about the prophet who has appeared. So I, Abraham, inquired and heard from those who had met him that there was no truth to be found in the so-called prophet, only the shedding of men's blood. He says also that he has the keys of paradise, which is incredible. Another reference puts in doubt whether 622 AD was the true beginning of the Saracen uprising. The Saracens rebelled in 618, the 7th year of the Emperor Heraclius, and appropriated for themselves Syria, Arabia, and Mesopotamia, more through trickery than through the power of their leader Muhammad. The Hispanic Chronicle of 754. This also puts in doubt the story that Islam began in Mecca of the Hijaz. All of the action appears to be happening way up north. Sibiosa's account is purportedly written in the 660s. But it may be a later interpolation. But if it can be trusted, it offers us a MHMD based in Syria and Iraq, so they, the Jews expelled from Edessa, departed. taking the road through the desert to Tachkastan, Arabia, to the sons of Ishmael. In that period a certain one of them, a man of the sons of Ishmael named Machmed, became prominent, because the command had come from on high. He ordered them all to assemble together and to unite in faith. This would place Muhammad somewhere between Edessa and Babylon, as the Jews were heading from Edessa to the home of their exilarch. This, if true, would be at odds with the sin which has Muhammad in Mecca and Medina. Muhammad of the traditions only ever is mentioned up north after a night journey. On the Burak, this may be an attempt to explain away the discrepancies in the story. There is a suggestion from a Jewish source that there was a king of the Arabians in conflict with a king of the Arabs. This is in the Pesikta Rabbati, a Jewish discourse from 630s, gathered in the mid-9th century. It says, in the year in which the Messiah reveals himself, all the kings of the nations of the earth will be at strife with one another. The king of Persia will make war with the king of Arabia, and this king of Arabia will go to Edom to take counsel from the Edomites. Thereupon, the king of Persia will lay the whole world waste. All the nations of the world will be agitated and frightened. They will fall upon their faces and they will be seized with pangs like the pangs of a woman in labor. End quote. Unfortunately, it is incredibly cryptic and likely only those in the know could understand what is being referred to. It is not clear who the king of Persia is. It might be the Jewish king of Persia, i.e. the 37th Jewish exilarch, Shalom the Pharisee, known in traditions as Salman al-Farsi, who reigned from 614 until 640 AD. The king of Arabia might be a leader of a Jewish sect who was in conflict with the Babylonian exilarch. Unfortunately, this is not fully clear but offers some historical insights into what was actually going on. We also have the Chinese source known as the Ju Tang Shu, compiled in 945 AD and based on a report from an envoy sent to the Tang court in China in 651 AD on behalf of the Tai. It says, in the second year of Yonghui, 651 AD, the Daisha, the Tai, sent its first envoy with tributes to our Tang royal court. The envoys told us that their king's surname was Daisha, Tai. Daisha situates in the west of Persia. During the year of Dayi, 605 AD tilde 618 AD, of Sui dynasty, there was a Persian man herding camels in the mountain Jufenmodi-ina. One day, a lion man appeared out of nowhere telling him, there are 3 caves on the west side of Jufenmodi-ina mountain. A large amount of weapons is stored inside the caves and you can go and retrieve them there. There is also a black stone with texts carved on it. You will become the king if you read and do what the carved text on the black stone tells you. There is a difficulty in interpreting this text as it is given in a mythical form and likely coded or encrypted to make its meaning intentionally unclear. The reference to a Persian man, given the play on Farsi and Farisi, might be misleading. It might be literal, in which case the founder was a Persian, either ethnically or part of the Persian Empire. It might be referring to a religious leader within the Babylonian academies, who followed a Talmudic or rabbinical form of Judaism. That he was herding camels might mean that he was leading Arabs in a Jewish sect. It could possibly mean that this leader helped to co-opt Arabs in the conquest of Jerusalem in 614 AD. The same Chinese source goes on to say, the Persian then followed the lion man's words and did find a large amount of weapons and the black stone with carved text telling him how to raise an army and rebel against the Persian Sassanid dynasty. The Persian then recruited fugitives and then crossed the river Hengi, Euphrates, to raid the caravans on the trade route. He then claimed himself to be the king and set up a separatist regime in the western part of Sassanid empires. The newly founded kingdom, separatist regime, then repelled and defeated numerous subsequent Persian, Sassanid, and Foline, East Roman Empire, invasion forces. If this Persian was the founder, it clashes with the sin and it is not reconcilable. The Hijaz is not the key location of where the events occurred. The 751 AD envoy gave the Chinese a different story entirely. Another saying is that the ruling clan of the Daisha, Tai, tribe is called Gulai, Quraysh, during the year of Kai Huang, 581 AD 600 AD, of Sui dynasty. There are two families within the Gulai tribe. One family is called Penenai Levantian, Bonu Hashim, and the other is called Penenai Mohuan, Bonu Marwan. There was a man from Penenai Levantian called Mokumo, Muhammad, who was very brave and wise and was hailed as the king by the tribe people. The king Mokumo then expanded the kingdom's territory stretching across 3,000 leagues from east to west with his mighty forces. He also conquered the city of Shi'ala, Syria, which is called City Sham, Damascus. End quote. We can now see that Mahmud and the Quraysh has been introduced, whereas before it focused on a Persian man and the Tai. However, this Chinese source offers us a significant clue that instead of there being one Mahmud, there were a series of Mahmds who acted as kings over a period of about 100 years. There were 11 Persians who came and, according to their rank as Mosho, were transformed into kings. After this the masses gradually gave their allegiance, and subsequently Persia was extinguished and Byzantium, Fulin, was crushed. When the original king had died, his office passed to the first Mosho, and now the king was the third Mosho. The royal surname is Tashi. This would lend weight to the idea that option 6, from the introduction, may be what actually happened. Mahmd was a historical title given to a series of people who were thought to be the Messiah. Benjamin of Tudela, who visited Baghdad in the 1160s, tells us that the Caliph was treated as a Muhammad. He says that pilgrims go to Baghdad on pilgrimage anxious to see the face of the Caliph and that he is regarded by them as Muhammad. This adds weight to the idea that Muhammad was just an office of Messiah that many different people filled. We can see an example of a later interpolation, where the phrase, "they go unto Mecca," which is in the land el-Yemen. If we read the text without that phrase, we see that more simple that the pilgrims who come from distant lands are anxious to see his face. That is the face of the Caliph. Islamic tradition appears to remember Ayas ibn Kabisha as Mahmd. Narrated Ibn Abbas, Abu Sufyan said, "Heraclius sent for me when I was in Aliyah, i.e., Jerusalem. Then he asked for the letter of Allah's messenger, and when he had finished its reading, there was a great hue and cry around him, and the voices grew louder, and we were asked to quit the place. When we were turned out, I said to my companions, 'The cause of Ibn Abi Kabsha has become conspicuous as the king of Bani al-Asfar is afraid of him.'" End quote. This doesn't appear obvious in the above, but it does here. Narrated Abdullah bin Abbas, "I told my companions that the question of Ibn Abi Kabsha, the Prophet, Muhammad, has become so prominent that even the king of Bani al-Asfar, Byzantine, is afraid of him. Then I started to become sure that he, the Prophet, would be the conqueror in the near future till I embraced Islam, i.e., Allah guided me to it." End quote. Abi Kabasha means, father of sheep, seems like a play on the name of the Ibn Kabisha. That is Ayas ibn Kabisha al-Tai, who was the Sasanian governor of Al-Hira from 602 to 617 AD. I.e. just on the eve of the Arab rebellion, and was also a member of the Tai tribe. However, despite his name being very close to that referred to in al-Bukhari, this appears to me now a very tenuous link, and he is simply too early to fit with the events that later took place in the 630s. Among the people that assumed the role of Mahmud was probably Umar, who became the leader crucially in 634 AD, precisely when Thomas the Presbyter and the Doctrina Jacobi refer to the Tai of Mahmud and a prophet who has appeared, respectively. The repeated occurrence of Mahmud on coins from the 660s onwards might suggest that a religious institution had been begun, with a series of leaders assumed the title of Mahmud. Alternatively, these coins might just refer to a general expectation of the coming of the Messiah, referred as Mahmd, i.e. Mahmud.